I'm going to start now with a question that was asked by Mauricio. Mauricio wants to know, in Germany, how many days a week would you have would you have a 12-hour shift? How many days would that be?
Okay, so the limit is 60 hours per week. So it means 5 days with 12 hours is the maximum. Yeah.
Thank
60,
you.
Yeah, 60 hours per week.
Okay. Brian has a question. Go ahead and unmute yourself.
Yeah, I'm curious about in France. Of course, before the virus, there was a mass movement against Macron's pension reforms. Hundreds of thousands or millions of people in the streets week after week after week for like 2 months. Obviously, the virus stopped that temporarily, but I'm wondering what larger effects the virus had on that mass movement. If people still have the same mindset moving forward, do they still want to continue protesting that? And what is the status of that reform right now?
Thank you. We'll have Nicolas answer. Unfortunately, Damien had to go to work.
Well, just a few words. First thing is that in the last period, we've read through the news that some of the members of the parliament were talking about the fact that they will not go until the legal process to achieve the law against pension reform. That we are not sure, but maybe we've got something like a victory on that point. I mean that the members of the parliament didn't end the vote process, and they are talking about the fact that it will not be able to achieve it after the crisis because of the need of some national union things and so on and so on. But we have to say on the other hand that we are not sure at all of it. And we must stay vigilant, so to say. And the other thing is that the movement was still decreasing a few weeks before the crisis cracked down. So the main fact for me is that we still manage to keep on meeting online with on my part it's with teachers, sorry, and every week we are 10 people. But last week, because of the question of reopening of the schools, we were 25. That's not huge, but it shows that there is a growing interest. And there is a lot of anger, but as we are confined, we can't really check what it is.
Okay, thank you. Just again, I want to say that if you want to raise your hand and you're on a phone, you have to press *9, and then to mute and unmute yourself, it's *6. So we have a question from Nadine Dixon.
Hi.
Hi.
I really resonate with the approach of both Miranda and Paula with the charts. And one of the things that struck me as I listened and looked is that we had healthcare separate from economy. And one of the things that I'm going to try to do, I'm in the US, I'm in Berkeley. And one of the things that I'm going to try to do is figure out a way to combine as they think to ramp up or reboot, reopen the economy. I would like to know what are the projections for, like I think at one point somebody spoke of the possibility of a second wave of the virus. And I'm wondering if there isn't the possibility, if we delay the reopening of the economy, that we can also avoid a second wave of the virus, that rebooting and increasing the economy at this point may not be as intelligent as prolonging the shelter in place and the social distancing, so that we don't have another increase or another wave of the virus, and really the economy is not my priority. my priority, of course, is the healthcare of the workers and the healthcare of the people in general. And maybe we as individuals could take some agency in generating that information from the CDC, from World Health Organization. Thank you for your approach. It actually lit up something in me. Thank you.
Thank you, Nadine. Okay, next up we have Drew, and then after that, prepare yourself, Kim.
Hello, thanks a lot, everybody, for the presentation. I just had a question. So what we've seen in America so far with the coronavirus is that there's been a growing social crisis. There's been a growing social crisis. So we've seen like record numbers of people in bread lines. We've seen a lot of people who haven't been able to pay their rent. We've seen immigrants, who don't have their papers be further marginalized. So I'm curious what you guys are seeing in Europe in regards to that. I mean, a lot of people know you guys have a lot of refugees who have been forced over to your countries from the wars. So maybe you could just explain a little bit of that.
Hi, thank you everybody who presented. I appreciated hearing from all of these different countries and what people are experiencing there. I have a bunch of questions, but I'm going to stick to one for now. I wanted to know, so in regards to the lack of personal protective equipment, one thing that has been really upsetting and surprising to me is that while it has been understood that we're missing so much of these supplies, the fact that industry hasn't been changed rapidly enough to start the production of these materials. And so I know that in the United States, the federal government, or Trump specifically, has refused to use his power to call on industry to produce this. But I wanted to know from the 3 different countries that we just heard, if there has been an attempt to make, Germany has a fantastic industry, France does too, Austria does too. Like, has anybody started to produce this equipment at a faster rate? Have people asked for it, and has the government actually responded in that way? So that's a question for all 3 presenters, if you guys could give me some insight on that. Thank you.
Thank you, Kim. Let's go ahead and have Laura ask her question or make her comment, and then we'll have our European folks answer both Drew's question and Kim's question. Laura, okay, or maybe Lori or Vizu. Or Axe, why don't you get in there and we'll see if Lori gets in.
All right, thanks everybody. That was really insightful to hear about all the different places in Europe and what's going on there. I have to say that I'm not surprised, but it was more shocking, and I just haven't thought about the desire of governments and business to try to make up for all this lost productivity that is happening right now. And I'm just curious, in terms of the fights ahead, and as was said earlier, what are kind of the perspectives towards struggling against attacks on the working class that sound like they're going to be increasing on a massive scale in a couple months. Thank you.
I can try to answer to give a first answer to Drew's question about refugees and people and people, well, the problem of the rents. In fact, for Germany, the government quite early in the crisis, they passed a law that said, well, if people now with the corona crisis cannot pay their rents, they cannot be expelled from their homes. So they was they stopped expulsions for not paying their rents until the summer. So, well, we will see what will happen then, because if you cannot pay your rent, you're still in debt. But you cannot lose your home for the moment. And they also made it more easy to get like social welfare on a minimal level for people losing their jobs. So I think there are not so dramatic consequences right now. But you're right to point out the question of the refugees. A lot of refugees are still living in refugee housing facilities where it's very difficult to have social distancing measures respected. So I know personally, a buddy of mine who is living in in the sort of refugee home, and he says, well, they are more confined than the rest of the people. But I wanted to say a last thing about the situation of the refugees at the borders of Europe, because there's a really a dramatic situation between Turkey and Greece, because there is where dozens of thousands that are coming to Greece and that are seeking shelter in Europe, and they are really under dramatic conditions where they're in refugee camps with no social distancing at all. So this is a real problem.
Yes, actually, I wanted to answer Kim's question.
Please.
Okay?
Thank you. Yeah.
Okay, which was about if I understood it right, to change the industry to get their own medical supplies, right? So at the moment, I think there are a lot of distilleries for liquor and stuff like this who change their production, but on their own, change it by their own to produce disinfection liquid or disinfectant. And because they need something to survive, so they did it like this. But as far as I know, there's no big industry who really changed their production to produce masks or lab coats. I think there are like smaller companies doing it kind of to survive, but there was not from the German government. So what I know that also the local governments try to buy masks from China, still like this. And there's like now also the discussion, okay, we should have our own production in Germany or at least in Europe for antibiotics and for all this protection material, but let's see what happened after the crisis. So because it's cost, of course, more than in China. So,
hi. So I guess it was a little bit addressed and the question was kind of posed, but I was curious. I know that you've said that in your respective countries, there have been these massive increases in unemployment. And I don't know about there, but I know 1/3 of people in the US didn't pay full rent in April. And I've been involved in some community organizing responses to this. And I know that especially like tenants organizations and potential talk of rent strikes and things of that nature. And I'm wondering, and I know when I've heard of similar organizations to the things I'm participating in forming all over, and I'm curious if you have heard of any rumblings in any of your respective countries of sort of tenants forming organizations via Zoom or through mailers or any kind of unemployment responses and things of that nature. And I'll also, for people in the Bay Area who are interested in getting involved in something like that, I'll include a email in the chat if anybody wants.
That's great, Eden. In fact, I want to say, please do sign up for our email so that you know about our future events. I know some of you are going to have to leave soon, So I just want to let you know that next week we're definitely going to have another COVID-19 town hall. We have Mike Davis joining us to talk about the global pandemic and climate disruption. And he's the author of many books on the impact of capitalism on the lives of working people in the planet. I'll tell you a little bit more about it after we get a response to Eden's question and comment.
Okay, because I just wanted to answer to a question concerning the industry and changing the industry so that PPE can be produced and protection masks in Austria. It's still a huge problem that there's not enough protection gear, and it will still continue to be a problem, I think, because we're now getting our stuff from China, but it's really difficult to get enough PPE. And there's a small consortium on the at the edge of Austria in the west, which is in the province of Vorarlberg, and there are trials to produce protections gear privately, protection masks. Yeah, that's all I wanted to say. Thank you.
Hi, everybody. In regards of your question earlier about what's being done in other parts and what's been working in Puerto Rico, because we are a colony, we cannot close our airports. Basically, they're still open. People from other parts of the world are coming in. There was some, they were taking the temperature and some stuff at the airport. Some of these things have been suspended out of the blue. And there's a really strong curfew for the local people in Puerto Rico, but people can come from outside. And there's been caravanas, like car protests. There's been people go to the supermarkets and with a megaphone and talk to the people on the lines. There's been cacerolazos. That at some point, like say at 7 p.m, everybody at their house in the balcony or in front of their house, they're banging pots and pots. There's been a lot of mutual aid organizations that are taking care of the people that have no income or immigrants, etc. And some of these things have been working. Most of these things have been organized by the feminists. They are demanding protection for women. They are demanding more tests because there's been very low testing. They're demanding and other stuff. I know we have little time. I just wanted to put that out, and I feel like we should use some of these strategies. There's tons of things we should be asking for, demanding for, like for example, to extend aid to the undocumented people of California and other things. Thank you.